Ankh Wajeb Seneb, or Life, Health, and Prosperity. Welcome to TCAM Thursdays, your midday cultural break. I'm Dr. Lana Reeves, the Education and Community Outreach Director here at the Kansas African American Museum.
And I am Paris Cunningham, the Curator of Collections here at our museum.
And I get the proud opportunity of sitting with Ms. Cunningham to talk about her awesome work here in our main gallery. She has put together a remarkable double exhibition here that I hope that you all are in the area, you get the opportunity to come down and see. So, first question off the top of my head, really, Paris, is this portrait of a man. How did you come up with that? It is such an awesome concept.
So, Portrait of a Man is based on a concept that I'd developed in my mind about a couple of years ago, almost 2 years ago, when I first started here at the museum. I was looking through our vault and I found these two really meticulously created art pieces. They were portraits of two different men and they were painted on wood boards. And I remember looking at those and looking at just the subtleties and emotion in each of those men and thinking, I would love to do an exhibition that puts on display the differences and the character and the nuances of Black men as opposed to making them out to be these kind of like, I don't want to say monolithic, but these kind of like two-dimensional characters. And so those two pieces inspired the whole of this exhibition, just because I wanted to show that sensitive, subtle, and um, three-dimensional aspect to Black men.
Okay, so you see these two awesome pieces of artwork and they give you this new concept. Tell our audience what your concept actually is.
So, Portrait of a Man is essentially an exhibition that displays notable African American men from Wichita and all throughout the state of Kansas. And what I wanted to do with these paintings or portraits of each man was to pair each piece with a piece of artwork from our collection that I felt displayed or explained who they were as a person and tapped more so into their character. Also, above each man, like you can see here, there's a word that I associated with each of them. Each of those words are maybe a characteristic or a trait that each man had that kind of to my knowledge anyway, best explains who they were for themselves and who they were for the community. Essentially, what I wanted to do was take their portrait and use that to add dimension and depth to them. Whereas in history, portraits are technically used to make someone prestigious or add, grandeur to them. But I wanted to take them and kind of do the opposite and let those portraits make them into a regular and realized human being.
And I think, like I said, I think that is such an awesome concept, and she carried it out so well. And going back to what she said about portraits, I remember that Frederick Douglass was considered one of the most photographed people of his time, and that was one of the reasons why. Just what you said there was so to add a certain amount of character that African American men were indeed men and should be viewed as such. He always had that stoic, no smile look, you almost can always say, oh, there's a Frederick Douglass portrait, because
Right.
there were a lot of them, but they all look a lot alike. And all you can see was the changes through the years, really, in those portraits. But I think that for his time, it was a great idea to help, you know, stop people from thinking that African American men were as you kind of mentioned earlier, that they were two dimensional, only one way or the other. Explain a little bit more about that. How you wanted to exploit that a little bit more and show the more depth to the men.
Okay, yeah, like you said, most of the time men are seen, well, Black men especially, are seen as either, like Barack Obama or LeBron James. They're like these superhero, kind of untouchable, unfathomable people that are beyond reproach, are, made out to be just these perfect, indestructible beings, or they're the exact opposite. They're made out to be these fatally flawed, um, unredeemable characters that we don't, you know, want to integrate into our society or make a part of the grander scheme of things. And there's just so much more in between that.
People can even try to say that they're afraid of that second.
Right, exactly. Either they look up to them or they are absolutely fearful of them. And there's so much more in between that, just like the rest of women, men, all different ethnicities. Black men are exactly the same. They have all of those nuances and
Mhm.
characteristics in between. Just like we might view black women as, we even have the strong black woman trope, which is not necessarily always flattering for black women,
Mhm.
but it does add some depth. It acknowledges the struggles that black women have to face, and a lot of the characteristics or tropes that African American men get, it doesn't insert all of the struggles that they might have to face, all of the feelings that they might experience, um, and even the differences in the different walks of life. It kind of makes them out to come from one place in the universe. And Black men come from all different kinds of places. They have all different kinds of experiences, and they contribute all different kinds of things to their communities. And so I just wanted to make sure to highlight all of that. You know, an African American man can be an enforcer, but he can also be funny. He can be uplifting and encouraging, but he can also be introspective.
Mhm.
And so there are paradoxes and there are differences within all of us that make us who we are. And the same can be said for especially influential and great black men.
And I would add that she has picked some really awesome people to portray here, and she's picked them from all along the spectrum of time here in Kansas, and some of them that she even knows. So tell us a little bit more about how you picked the African American men that you are have displayed here.
Yes. So I more than likely each of the pieces that came from or that are in this exhibition come from our collection or come from businesses or associates that we are closely tied to. So a lot of the portraits, like this one here of Charles Goose Dowdy Jr., is a picture that came from our Trailblazers collection, whereas this portrait here of Mr. Emerson McAdams came from Jackson Mortuary. So, under certain limitations, I wanted to make sure I had access
Mhm.
to certain portraits, and also that those portraits um, kind of created a grander picture of the influential African American men from Kansas. A lot are from Wichita.
Mhm.
Um, and we would love for anybody, if they have people that they would suggest that we add to our collection or add to our archive, that would be great. But initially, what our plan was to stick to mostly paintings or portraits or artwork of some sort of each of those men, because those pieces are, like I said, often used to display grandeur or to kind of emphasize the greatest parts of those men.
Mhm.
And I wanted to use those to inject the other characteristics.
And then too, I noticed that you also have um, pieces of artwork as well. And how did you select those pieces of artwork that may not be of any person specifically, but more of something else? How, explain that.
Yes. So essentially, when I was going through our collection, the pieces that I chose, I of course at the base was looking for each of those pieces to have either black men portrayed in some sort, or um, experiences surrounding black men portrayed within those pieces of artwork. So like the piece here, it's titled Love. It's a print by Samela Lewis, and it's of a father with his child. Um, what I wanted to do by pairing these pieces with each of those men was to kind of give light to how they were seen and how they were experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And even some of the men have quotes with their pictures and their artwork. But I chose each piece um, I chose each piece. It's kind of like context, if you will, like kind of like a narrator.
Hmm.
You see the initial picture and you don't have much information about it. I wanted to use that piece of work, painting, portrait, drawing, print, whatever, to kind of narrate and give more background context. And I feel like paired with the word for
Hmm.
each man, it kind of lets you in on and lets you interpret what exactly was meant by each of the pieces with it.
So now I got to ask this big question: is love like a double entendre here with Coach Dowdy? That he's a tennis coach, and then you got the word
That's
love
funny.
as well as. I mean, obviously, he's a great coach. He is a great coach and is a loving person. So, did you
That
do
is
that
funny.
intentionally?
I didn't at all. And I didn't think about that at all until you just said that love is like zero. And I didn't think about that at all. But that's really genius. See, and that's the thing. People can interpret whatever they want from the pieces and put it all together, and it helps to paint a greater picture and give you more of an idea of who that person is, and also an idea of how you perceive things, really.
Mhm.
So, but that's a really cool. I'm gonna use that now. That's thank you
Well,
for
see,
making me
that's
more
the thing
brilliant than I already am.
about our awesome curator here, though, is that she is such a genius that sometimes she doesn't even realize how genius she is. I mean, it's just amazing. So, tell us a little bit about some of the men that you have picked here. What more can you tell us about Coach Dowdy or Emerson McAdams? I know there's more to their story than just being a part of our awesome Portrait of a Man collection here, or even I think behind me here we have Gordon Parks and Junius Groves, and I see
Yes.
former mayor or Brewer, Carl
Hmm.
Brewer, and I think I can't think of his name. The police.
Yes, former police chief Norman
That's
Williams.
right.
Yeah. So, I can tell you a bit more about Coach Dowdy. And I can tell you kind of a personal story.
Hmm.
Coach Dowdy was actually so I began playing tennis, I believe, when I was 8 or 9. And I started playing because I went out to Fairmount Park. I lived close to that park and in that neighborhood. And what he would do, well, first he gave free tennis lessons to all of the kids at Fairmount Park, well, that lived near Fairmount Park and McAdams Park. And he would hold summer tennis camps for each of those parks. And I think me and my sister went over to that park one of the days and started playing and stuff, and it was really fun. And I learned to play tennis well, and I kind of took to it because we played a game called Knockout. And in Knockout, what it meant was that there was one challenger on one side of the court and then one winner on the other side. And if you were able to keep the ball going and win your point, you'd go to the winner's side. Well, whoever could go to the winner's side and stay there the longest would get candy. And so that was my objective. I wanted that candy, and I wanted to get the candy first, because if you got the candy first, you got to pick from an assortment of candy. If you got it last, you got the last little piece that nobody wanted. So my objective was to get the best piece of candy. And eventually, I grew up and I continued to play, and we continued to have practices, free practices. I never paid for a tennis lesson in my whole life, and I ended up going to Prairie View A&M University with a partial tennis scholarship. And so that was always so special to me. And just, even Coach Dowdy, even closer to the end of his life when he wasn't able to play anymore, he still was there at the courts, still was there giving advice, and still was there just imparting all the knowledge he could. He was such a gentle and patient and encouraging man. And I chose the word uplifting because no matter if you were, if you took to tennis well or if you didn't, you could be like the kid that's hitting the ball over the fence, and he would still encourage you to keep trying and say, "Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Here, you just got to do this. You just got to get down and keep that racket straight. Keep that racket straight." And he would always, demonstrate for you, and was always there. I personally, I think it's amazing when people are able to work with children and I think it's really awesome when people are able to work with children and to impart knowledge, but also to be gentle and kind and to understand and respect that they are people that are growing as well. And that was something that I always experienced with him, in all stages of my life. When I was a little kid up until I was a teenager and a young adult, there was always that respect there and always that grace. And it was just, really, really awesome. So that's
Amazing.
specifically why I chose Coach Dowdy, because, you know,
And now, did you put him and Mr. McAdams together because of their connection over at McAdams Park as well?
I did. I did. I did. I did. It was really cool learning about Mr. Emerson McAdams, and I love that painting so much. Um, One of the coolest things I learned about Mr. Emerson McAdams, um, well, first of all, just to give some history, our park located at 13th and, oh gosh, I can't think of the car street.
Wabash.
Wabash. Thank you. Um, our park there used to be called McKinley Park, and it was named after one of our former presidents. And Mr. Emerson McAdams was the park director, or you could call him the kind of like the guy who did everything out there. And I believe he dedicated, oh gosh, I can't think of exactly how many years. He dedicated 27 years. I was going to say 25 to that park. And so because of the time, he was he would be out there. There used to be a golf course, and he would rake sand on the golf course. He would fish snakes out of the swimming pool there. He would mow the lawn. He would set up movies for young people to come and watch on weeknights during the summer. He did so much for that park, and in doing so much for that park, he did so much for the community. Um, and the word enforcer was used. It was actually quoted by, I believe, either Mr. Galen Vesey or Mr. Charles McAfee about Emerson McAdams, because it was said that he had a bullhorn he would carry with him around the park. And if he saw any of the young people doing something that was not good for themselves or good for the park, he would take that bullhorn and call them out and say, "Hey, hey, Mr. So and so, you're not supposed to be doing that."
Let me have your attention. Everyone, quiet down.
So he was a really respected figure, and he created a space for all of us to come and feel comfortable and enjoy our community. And so he passed unexpectedly in, oh gosh, was it 1952? No, that's way too soon. In October of 1965, he passed unexpectedly of a heart attack. And immediately after his passing, there were people from the community that petitioned, and there were so many signatures on that petition that the park was renamed Emerson McAdams Park. And so I know growing up, it was just it was something that rolled off your tongue, McAdams Park, never knowing who that person was and what they did for that space and why it was named after them. And so I think that's super special for me as well, just to know the man behind that name and all that he did for the community. And a lot of times we think of, people that work in the community like that who don't necessarily have a specific title, but they do so much. We tend to forget and take those people for granted, and those names become commonplace. But his work and his effort there really means something, and it's still a place that we get to use and go to and take pride in.
And see, and that's another genius move about this exhibition, is that we have an opportunity to help people know who some of the people are behind the names around places here in Wichita and across the state here in Kansas. Do you have a favorite piece here at all?
Yes. So my favorite piece of artwork, because I don't think I can single out a favorite man within the exhibition. There's a piece of artwork called The Masquerade. And it is a painting that we have by Dr. Samela Lewis. Of course, she's one of our favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And this painting, and I encourage you to come and take a look at it. It's a painting of a group of men. One man is sitting But each man has a mask on, some like a painted conceptual kind of mask on. And the focal figure in this painting, it looks almost as if he's taken his mask off and revealed like a darker underside, or a deeper, more kind of labored expression, which is kind of how most of us are. We put on a face every day and we go out into the world, and we are who we make ourselves up to be, or who other people make us up to be. But the focal figure has taken off his mask, or has rested, and there are men around him who still have on their masks. Some men, they have on a mask. It looks like they want to hurt him. Other men are there to support him. Um, but it just shows the difference in who we are on the outside and who we truly are on the inside, and the things that we experience and face daily. And I thought that that was really important to include in this exhibition, especially about African American men, about Black men, because there is a face, just like the rest of us, that they have to put on. They have to put on this strong and knowing and knowledgeable and gifted face when they go out in the world. But it's also important for them to be able to show that other side. And even with all the obstacles and people and things going against them, it's important that we give them spaces to reveal all that they are, because at the end of the day, those are the things that we remember most about people. And those are the things that truly make an impact, is when we show those things on the inside that may make us vulnerable. So, yes.
Didn't I say it? Genius, pure genius. So if you want to know or witness what she has done, you really have to come down here and check it out. I'm to wrap it up and just say, Paris, thank you again for what an awesome job you have done yet again. I mean, you are just a genius, okay? Just
Well,
accept the
thank you.
title. If one of your pictures was up here, over it would say genius as well as artist, okay?
I would hope so.
And thank you again for tuning in to TCAM Thursdays, your midday cultural break.
Thanks.